Welcome back. Take a moment to settle in because what we're about to walk through today is not hype-driven, not price obsession, and not another recycled XRP to the moon storyline. This is about cutting through the noise and identifying real signal. More importantly, it's about separating what sounds exciting from what actually matters. Right from the start, there's one thing I want you to put aside completely, and that's emotion. Forget the Twitter headlines, forget Telegram forecasts, forget people shouting numbers with zero accountability behind them. Because the moment you approach XRP emotionally, you almost guarantee that you'll make the wrong decision at the wrong time. And statistically, most people already have. Today's discussion is built around one question that gets abused relentlessly in crypto. When will XRP reach $10,000? But instead of pulling numbers out of thin air or dressing speculation up as certainty, we handed the problem to something designed to remove emotion entirely. Google Gemini, one of the most advanced artificial intelligence systems available, was asked to model multiple XRP scenarios using real assumptions, real constraints, and real macroeconomic conditions. Before excitement takes over, this needs to be said clearly. AI price projections are not truth. They are frameworks. They are probability models, not prophecies. And the moment you treat them like guarantees, you've already lost. Most people misunderstand what tools like Gemini are actually for. They are not designed to tell you what will happen. They are designed to show you what would have to happen for certain outcomes to even be possible. That distinction matters far more than any number. At present, XRP trades in the low single-digit range, while remaining one of the largest digital assets by market capitalization. That alone reveals something most retail participants still refuse to accept. XRP is no longer a speculative microcap. It is already systemically relevant, and that means its upside behaves very differently from meme coins and hype cycles. So instead of asking Gemini for one fantasy number, we approached this intelligently. We asked it to evaluate XRP under 4 distinct scenarios: bearish, neutral, bullish, and most realistic, across 3 different time frames: 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. Only after doing that did we ask the long-term question everyone obsesses over. What would it actually take for XRP to reach $10,000? And this is where I need to push back firmly. If you're watching this video looking for confirmation bias, if you want reassurance that $10,000 XRP is inevitable, easy, or right around the corner, this isn't the place for you. Because the truth is uncomfortable. And most people don't want truth, they want dopamine. Crypto markets are full of people who confuse possibility with probability. Yes, many things are theoretically possible, but markets don't move on theory alone. They move on liquidity, regulation, infrastructure, adoption, velocity, and time, a lot of time. That's exactly why this exercise matters. When an AI system like Gemini evaluates XRP, it doesn't care about narratives. It doesn't care about influencers. It doesn't care how badly anyone wants generational wealth. It evaluates constraints, market size, capital inflows, macro liquidity, regulatory friction, and utility adoption. That is the lens institutions use, not vibes. So in this video, we're doing 3 things intentionally. First, we're breaking down Gemini's short-term and medium-term scenario modeling and explaining what actually drives those figures instead of reading them like gospel. Second, we're exposing where most people completely misunderstand long-term XRP valuation and why extreme numbers get thrown around so casually. Third, and this is the part most creators avoid, we're having an honest discussion about what would have to break, change, or be rebuilt in the global financial system for $10,000 XRP to even enter the conversation. No hype, no guarantees, no fantasy math. Just frameworks, reality checks, and a clear-eyed understanding of what you're actually holding. Because if you don't understand the conditions required for massive upside, you won't survive the volatility required to get there. With the ground rules established, let's begin where Gemini did, with the 90-day outlook and why even the most bullish short-term scenarios come with more risk than most people want to admit. Now slow this down because this is where many people lose perspective entirely. When you hear a phrase like XRP to $10,000, your mind instantly jumps into fantasy mode. Cars, early retirement, screenshots, dreams. That mindset is exactly backward. The real question isn't whether XRP can reach $10,000, but what would have to occur for that outcome to be mathematically plausible. At roughly $3 per XRP with approximately 55 to 60 billion tokens in circulation, XRP already sits near the top of the crypto market. For it to reach $10,000 today would imply a market capitalization larger than the entire global economy. That fact alone should signal something important. This is not a short-term trade thesis. Anyone selling it as one is either uninformed or intentionally misleading. That's why Gemini pointing toward 2030 actually matters, not because AI is magical, but because the logic is rooted in time, infrastructure, and adoption. XRP does not move on hype. It moves when systems evolve. For XRP to be valued in the thousands, it cannot simply be a token people trade on exchanges. It must be embedded into the infrastructure of global finance, cross-border settlement, tokenized assets, central bank digital currencies, and institutional liquidity rails. That is the only environment where such numbers make sense. And here's what many still fail to grasp. XRP does not require retail investors to succeed. Retail buying pressure alone will never drive it to those levels. What moves XRP is liquidity demand. When banks, governments, payment providers, and institutions require XRP as a tool, price becomes a secondary consequence. That's why focusing on short-term price predictions completely misses the point. Gemini did not say next month or next year for $10,000 XRP. It said after a paradigm shift. That means the existing financial system must evolve or break, with XRP becoming a core component of what replaces it. Ask yourself honestly, does that sound impossible, or does it sound slow, unexciting, and inevitable? People laughed at Bitcoin reaching $100,000 when it was trading at 100, not because the math didn't work, but because they couldn't envision institutions taking it seriously. XRP is in a similar psychological phase now, except institutions are already involved. This isn't about Lambos. It's about understanding what you actually hold. Now things become more interesting once you move past daily noise and start seeing the broader structure. For the 6-month outlook, Gemini didn't recycle surface-level predictions. It factored in macro liquidity cycles, institutional adoption timelines, and regulatory behavior following ETF approvals. 6 months is long enough for capital repositioning, but short enough that speculation still influences price. In the bearish case, Gemini sees XRP potentially falling toward 55 cents, driven not by XRP-specific failure, but by global liquidity contraction. Tightening monetary policy, sovereign debt shocks, or sudden risk-off environments sell everything indiscriminately. That's not XRP weakness, that's market brutality. The neutral case places XRP around 375, representing a scenario where nothing dramatic changes. No ETF approval, no sudden institutional surge, no major regulatory breakthroughs beyond what's already priced in. XRP builds quietly, price remains dull, and infrastructure continues in the background. This is the scenario most retail underestimates, yet it's often where accumulation occurs. The bullish 6-month scenario sees XRP around $12 if multiple factors align, particularly strong altcoin rotation driven by ETF approvals and institutional inflows. In that case, XRP isn't just following Bitcoin, it's benefiting from compliant, liquid, institution-friendly capital flows. Gemini then identifies 675 as the most realistic 6-month outcome, not due to a lack of upside, but because institutional adoption scales gradually. Banks test, integrate, scale, then expand. That's how real money behaves. Even that realistic scenario represents meaningful upside without hype. And the real lesson isn't whether the number is right, it's understanding why price could move at all. Finally, the $10,000 question. Gemini was clear. That level requires a complete financial paradigm shift, not a bull market or ETF excitement. The earliest plausible window is around 2030, and only if XRP transitions into a globally adopted interbank settlement layer. At that valuation, XRP would be part of global financial plumbing. Cross-border payments migrate. Tokenized assets require neutral settlement. Liquidity depends on XRP. Price follows function. That's why Gemini frames it as systemic, not speculative. And before ending, this must be clear. None of this is financial advice. Nothing here is a promise or guarantee. It is scenario modeling. Markets are volatile.